Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. And we are 27 days away from the midterm elections here in the United States. And as races are starting to really heat up around the country, there's one particular one that we continue to focus on is the one in Arizona. The one for that is centered around Kari Lake run for governor, and Court Blake Masters who's running for Senate over there. And as Mitch McConnell continues to ignore Blake Masters, and not send any money his direction, he's still keeping it competitive there, but Kari Lake has seemed to open up a huge lead. And there's a couple of reasons why she is doing that is, because she's very straightforward. She doesn't hold back and she is willing to go after the media and of course, the Democrat Party and not shy away from being with President Trump. Many of these politicians out there will distance themselves from Trump, because they think Trump is too toxic, or Trump is too damaged goods or anything like that. Kari Lake thinks the opposite. And she continues to hammer home that no, Trump is our friend, Trump is someone who has started this movement. And we're going to continue to get behind that Make America Great Again move at the America First movement, and Kari Lake isn't taking any prisoners. She is going to attack the media when they deserve to be attacked, which is almost every single day because that's the way they do the rest of the country. They attack every person in this country who does not vote Democrat because they're active Democrat operatives. Well, Kari Lake took a moment during the rally in Arizona the other day to remind her consultants to put down to Hunter Biden crack pipe, and put a strong message out to the media. So let's go and dive into it. Well, what do we have here? And it states this here. Headline says put down Hunter Biden's crack pipe. Kari Lake tells the anti-Trump consultants and media to power insane hugs President Trump at Mesa, Arizona rally. That's right. So last night, Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake was brought up on stage with President Trump during his Save America rally in Mess Up, Arizona, and she showed him how much she loves him with a big hug. She says, I know for a fact President Trump loves Arizona. But President Trump, I think Arizona loves you even more. I really do. Said Kari Lake as a crowd erupted with cheers. Bringing down the house. Everyone listen to this, Kari Lake said. Oh man, Arizona, you're too good to me. Do you love this guy or what? I know for a fact President Trump loves Arizona, but President Trump, I think Arizona loves you even more. I really do. Say that right? Why, when we love him, think about ghosts, go back in history here just a few years. Record low inflation. We were our 401ks looks great. I just talked to a neighbor who's lost a third of his retirement savings since Joe Biden took office. We were doing great. Our kids were safe because our streets were safe. He supported the police. We had great times under President Trump. And we miss you so much, President Trump. Now I gotta tell you, I have some of these nothing consultants who tell me you really need to back away from President Trump right now. And I say to them, put down Hunter's crack pipe right now. Wouldn't it be horrible? Wouldn't it be horrible? What would it say about my character if I stepped away from my friends? If I step away from my friends, that means I would step away from you, and I will never step away from the people of Arizona. And so for those nothing consultants and the media, I want to show you what it looks like when I step away from President Trump. Okay, there we go. Yes. For there's nothing consultants and media. This is what it looks like when I step away from President Trump. Amazing. Kari Lake is someone who I think is going to lead the state of Arizona in a very, very positive direction. She seems to have all of the platforms all ready to go, and what she wants to see happen, and to say there is no one wants to use the resources of Arizona to stop the illegal migration at the border, the flow of drugs at the border, and of course helped clean up some of the other things that are hurting people of Arizona. So if you live in Arizona, let me know what you guys think of Kari Lake in the comments down below. And this is some big news, but honestly, folks, Bill Maher might be getting the whole red pill. He might be seriously waking up here. I mean, it feels as though Bill Maher is almost having like a political evolution. I don't know if it's a Bill Maher political evolution, or if it's just maybe he's been mischaracterized. Maybe Bill Maher isn't actually a Democrat or a liberal. Maybe Bill Maher is more of a libertarian. Most of his liberal stances are just kind of live, and let live things. Nowadays, it seems almost as if Bill Maher has more in common with Ron Paul than he does with your average Democrat or your average leftist. The guy is waking up, and that's just what happens. I guess if you're honest, the reality is Bill Maher is more honest than any of these other late-night TV hacks. He's willing to point out the obvious and to use basic common sense instead of just falling in with the liberal Hollywood mob. And guess what, friends? Bill Maher literally just said on Dave Rubin's podcast. I believe it's his podcast that he's considering moving to Florida. If California Governor Gavin Newsom moves forward with more mandates, that is a big admission. I mean, could you imagine perceived left-wing ally and champion Bill Maher joining Joe Rogan and everybody else who's left California, leaving Hollywood and moving to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or wherever he goes? I mean, that would be huge. A loyal left-wing political thought leader fleeing a Democratic stronghold, and Democratic government takes this whole California exodus thing to the next level. It's a phenomenon that continues to grow and it's not slowing down. I mean, let's not forget that Governor Gavin Newsom ad where he essentially begged people not to move to Florida. Well, it seems as though it didn't exactly work even with Democrat Party loyals, as now even Bill Maher is looking at the greener pastures of Florida and saying, you know what, maybe people aren't crazy. Maybe there's something to it. I really think I think they are seriously hurting themselves in terms of the long-term view, in response to all the pain and suffering, in response to all of the issues, in response to all of their failures. They're doubling down. They continue to double down, refuse to cede any ground whatsoever. And I think what we're starting to see is a mass awakening. People are waking up saying, whoa, these liberal policies are just not working. They're not working for me. They're not working for my family anymore. There was actually a stunning poll that came out of Australia recently, Australia being a relatively left-wing place. I mean, center-left is probably a good way to describe it, where the majority of people surveyed preferred spending cuts in respect to tax hikes. May seem like something relatively small, but that's certainly a wake-up call. To me, it's a trend moving away from the nanny state, big government, and left-wing politics and ideology. In general, left-wing leaders like Governor Gavin Newsom are falling out of favor, and quick, and we're seeing this start to happen in many Democrat strongholds. We recently spoke about how Republican gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin in the state of New York is slowly starting to creep up on Kathy Hochul. I also recently covered what's happening in left-wing Oregon, how a Republican candidate is on track to possibly win the state. Who would have thought that deep blue Oregon would elect a Republican governor? But it might actually happen, in this mass exodus and the mass wake-up call, I guess you could call it, is all connected. It feels like the demise of left-wing leadership. People are sick of it. I mean, just look at what California Governor Gavin Newsom is doing. We're seeing an oil crisis and an inflation crisis. California has inflation relief payments start going out on Friday. California's government is tackling inflation caused by stimulus with more stimulus. Seems almost like a vote-grabbing tool right before the elections. And then right after the elections, Gavin Newsom's stealth tax increase. The state quietly raises the marginal income tax to 14.4% in 2024. During an affordability crisis, they're increasing taxes and pushing out more stimulus. Democrats have completely what's the plot. Bill more riled up is that they're still talking mandates this late in 2022. After everything we learned, they're still talking mandates. People are fed up, and rightfully so. And that's why we keep seeing these headlines. Ken Griffin pulling Citadel out of Chicago, making good on threats. The richest man in Illinois said he is taking his companies to Miami. Why? Boeing and Caterpillar are leaving Illinois. Billionaire investor Carl Icahn to leave New York for Florida. The rich and the wealthy are leaving, and you see headlines like this from the New York Times. Some New Yorkers don't want the super rich to return. Sure, the tax revenue is nice, but keep coping. Left Boyds, they're pushing the investor class away. They're pushing jobs away. They're pushing tax revenue away with their horrible policies, their anti-capitalist stances, and their eat the rich activism. It's not going to end well for you. What they don't seem to realize is that your fancy environmental policies and your fancy social welfare policies don't exist without the bridge. I mean, take a look at Detroit, Michigan. Used to be the richest city in America with a population in the city center of over 2 million, if I'm not mistaken. Over the last however many decades, as industry started to die and leave Detroit, the city has died with it. Only a little bit over 600,000 people remain in downtown Detroit. Some places in the surrounding suburbs look like third world war zones. You cannot survive without capitalism. You can't survive without jobs, job creators pouring in tax dollars to pay for everything. Once again, another example of left voids shooting themselves in the foot. They don't seem to understand that California, of course, has been an economic powerhouse, but California is not entitled to it. And the more they push jobs out, the more they push people like Elon Musk and other jobs creators out, the worst is going to get for them. What we're currently seeing now is an absolute explosion in places like Miami, Austin, Texas, and many other metropolitan areas in Texas. And slowly but surely, as we see this continue, as we see the trend continue, Republican states and Republican cities that are friendly to business, low tax environments, and that are very importantly after 2020 pro-freedom are absolutely booming. Meanwhile, Democrat cities based on Democrat leadership are in decline. And I think this whole thing is connected. Maybe it's taking more time than you might like, but I truly believe this is all part of our shift into a new conservative era. The left has overstayed their welcome. They've abused and used their voters. They refuse to come a little bit closer to the center, which is what I think is pushing so many people away, and we're seeing a massive political enlightenment period. People are finally waking up that government dependence isn't a good thing. It's not government reliance in government stimulus without any baggage. It comes with a whole lot of baggage, and unintended consequences are frankly very obvious intended consequences. And people are realizing that it's not just free money and stimulus that you may be happy that you get a $1,500, $100, $2,000 check, whatever it is, in the short term, but in the long term, you become significantly poorer and worse off. In the end, I've noticed a trend of people waking up. California is used as the model of how not to govern these days. Lifelong Democrat voters and Democrat strongholds are considering voting for Republican governors for the first time in over 20 years. Traditionally, left-wing people are leaving California and considering voting Republican for the first time as well. Now we even have Bill Maher threatening to leave California and move to Florida, and it just all slowly piles onto itself and creates this image in my mind, this vision, that we are headed towards a political enlightenment period, a conservative movement, a new conservative age where people finally wake up and reject modern leftism. Maybe it's a fantasy, maybe I'm coping, maybe it's hopium, I don't know what it is, but it's just how I feel based on what I'm seeing. Alright, thanks for being here, folks. Please receive a big hug from all of us. Let me know down below if you like these updates. Remember where we go: 1.